This technique set of 10 techniques that we offer at Yellow Belt in Kuk Soo Kwan is called the Eue Bok Soo. Eue Bok Soo meaning clothing grab defense techniques. Most of these, I have to be honest with you, are based on the Nikyo lock, which is just a diversion of the wrist obliquely like so. Nearly all the techniques are going to use this lock in one fashion or another. Number one, clearest example, he's got my wrist, he's got my sleeve actually. This could be anything, TSA, I don't know. I first grab my thumb inside the webbing between his thumb and forefinger, my forefingers on the fifth metacarpal, keeping his hand pressed against my skin so that there's no air. I slither my hand around like a tree snake with no air introduced until my hand comes to the top. At this point, we have a really important lock to maintain. My right hand and my left hand must be fused together. Whatever my right hand does, my left hand does as well. It's like they're welded, bracketed even. I need that because when I move the right hand, it has to influence the left hand, which actually creates the Nikyo lock. Another thing that's really important is that I not chop down, but that my right fingers rise up and then down like a diving dolphin. That's the only way this technique works. Never chopping. In fact, give me your full resistance. If I just chop here, he feels an uncomfortableness and his wrist is not pleasant, but it won't submit him until I make the circle, and then it does. So that diving action is really important. And that's technique number one of the Eue Bok Soo. In the second technique of the Eue Bok Soo set at Yellow Belt, he sees my clothing around the level of the elbow. What I have to do to get this one, again using a Nikyo lock, my hand reaches across and my index finger will place on his ring finger. Doing so kind of stymies the ability of his hand to open. If he thinks about it, he'll be able to open his hand, but not before I finish this technique. So, next thing I'm going to do is make a V shape with the crook of my elbow, and I trap his hand sideways in that space, which is called the cubital fossa. I want to think like I'm cracking a walnut. I want the seams, the edge of his hands to be lined up with the left, or I should say the forearm and the upper arm. So I don't want it either flat to the forearm or flat to the bicep. I want it straddling the both so that both members of my arm abut against the sides of his hand. Then I squeeze as much as I can with just the bicep flexion, and when I'm at maximum pressure there, only then do I tighten the wrist. When I squeeze the fist, it's like the effect of a blood pressure cuff. It has the final locking in of pressure. And I do keep my bicep pretty well taut and flexed here, but that's all I do. I otherwise keep it static. Then, keeping my posture very perfectly vertical, I turn on the axis of the center of my head with my left foot swinging back. And this creates the lock that drives him down. And that's the final submission. Here we are with Eue Bok Soo number 3. It's actually still at the elbow. The second of the two techniques at the elbow, nonetheless, it's number 3. Once again, I reach over and I make contact with the back of the hand. This time what I need to do is elevate my elbow and then drape the fingers of my right hand about at the crook of his elbow. When I start the technique, there should be no pressure on his wrist or his arm otherwise to signify to him that a lock is going to happen. In fact, he should feel no pain whatsoever. It's going to behoove me to be absolutely relaxed throughout this technique. If I introduce any sort of tension that tips him off, I'm not going to be able to pull the technique off, and he's very easily going to be able to resist it. This is what I do. From this very relaxed posture, I simply imagine that there's a coin on the ground that I'd like to pick up, and without adding any tension to my body whatsoever, I simply bend over like a teapot pouring tea or water, and I pick up the coin. And that drives him down. Now this works despite his resistance. Give me your full resistance. If I use any pressure at all, like I said I might have done, you can see nothing happens at all. Pressure doesn't do it. Yielding does it. It's only when I give up that it works. Here we are with number 4 of the Eue Bok Soo technique set at yellow belt. Another Nikyo. This time they've seized us by the cloth on the shoulder and we want to control them. First thing I'm going to do is turn away from the potential of this hand to hit me. After I've grasped, I rotate 180 degrees to where now I have a little bit of coverage from the possibility of that right hand coming in at me. But here you see the Nikyo is already forming on the shoulder. I need it on the outside of my shoulder deltoid, not the front, not the chest, but on the outside. And that's because I'm going to use the pressure of my body to affect the lock, and it needs to be at the most proximal point of my shoulder to him. The trick of this technique is that we have to combine 6 opposing forces, and they're all paired. The first one is me lifting myself up to stand as tall and straight as I can, a rising motion. Paired with that is me pulling his hand down. Those 2 forces oppose each other, up and down. Second is for me to press toward him as though I were kind of encroaching on his space, at the same time as I pull his hand toward me. Those 2 forces combine. And finally, there needs to be a rolling motion. My body is going to roll toward him like a wave at the same time as my hand rolls his hand down and toward me. And those 2 rolling forces combined. It's only when I combine all 3 of those paired forces simultaneously, though, that I get the effect of the lock, which drops the opponent and leads me to have full control of him. In number 5 of this Eue Bok Soo set, actually we're not going to do a Nikyo this time. First thing I'm going to do is simply roll my body away because I want to make distance from the potential punch. And I dip under the shoulder as I roll around. And I want to make my shoulder and my jaw kind of do a little job of trapping his wrist. And then I close that 3rd gap with my hand on the back of the elbow. Now here's where this technique's really important. I don't want to move his body yet. What I want to do first is turn his olecranon, that's the tip of his elbow, so that it faces absolutely skyward. So I roll his shoulder and arm in place rather than moving him. Once this elbow is pointed up, only then do I take my knife hand and place it 1 inch above his olecranon at a spot we call triple burner 10. It's also a very sensitive spot for the ulnar nerve. That rests there. Here, I still don't move left or right. Actually, I'm going to cinch down and pull his body directly into my stomach. When I do that, I have an arm bar on his elbow. If I want, I can knee the face. Otherwise, I can keep pressing and take down. That's number 5 of the Eue Bok Soo at yellow belt. In number 6, I need to turn off line first. Number 6 of the Eue Bok Soo. First thing I do is I drive with my fist, maybe to cause damage, more to make space. As I press out, that elongates his joint. I then roll my head under, and as I do, I take an opportunity shot and make a passing hook as I go. Other than that, I maintain the same kind of trap with my hand. What's important is after I've hooked, my left hand blindly needs to go right to his hand and make the joint lock. With enough practice, you can just feel where the hand is, and you can just get a sense for exactly where it is. The thumb between the thumb and forefinger, the forefingers on the edge. And then, using your own head to create the momentum, you step through and make an armbar. That's the end of Eue Bok Soo number 6. In number 7, this mean, tough guy has got my lapel bunched up, and he's really threatening me. The trick for this one, though, which is unlike other Hapkido, is that I need to turn his hand to its maximum before I do any body movement at all. Usually the rule in Hapkido is that our bodies are always united with the technique. But this is an anomaly in that I need to first put my thumb on the back of his hand and then roll so that with 2 thumbs on the back of his hand, my uniform or my lapel is wrapped up in his hand. Now I say that I need to turn his hand in isolation before I follow through with my body. The reason why is because if I do my body now, what's going to happen is that he's going to be able to throw his arm around me, and then we're going to end up in a kind of stalemate where I'm not able to finish the lock, and we just get into this kind of stalemate grappling position. So to avoid that, what I'm going to do is first use my thumbs and hand to twist this as far as it can at its maximum. When it is at its maximum, only then do I step through with my right leg, adding pressure to the thumb with the turning of my body. Now, if I've turned him enough, he'll be so far ahead of my own shoulder that he'll be falling away before he can step and grab me. That spares me from that kind of headlock grudge match. Anyway, now that I'm here, what I'm going to do is step over far, and you see that I've put my foot beyond his elbow. I then scooch that close to his body so that I've effectively pinned his arm against his body. It's important that I do this right at the level of his elbow, though, because that does the best to really secure his hand and prevent him from using it. Notice that if I'm below, he can extract his arm, and if I'm above, he can still interfere by having, But if I'm right on the elbow and come across, there's a momentary pin. That gives me enough time to turn this obliquely and finish the koregaeshi lock that causes the submission. That's number 7. In number 8 of the Eue Bok Soo, he's again threatening me. Usually, traditionally, we have this grab both lapels. Not that it matters, but I'm going to effectively do the same lock that I did for number 4 of this technique set. That involves turning his pinky skyward. To do that, I use the opposite hand of the hand he's grabbing me with, which in this case is my right hand. I turn his pinky skyward, and then I support with my other hand. Now, just like in number 4, I need a rising action, a sinking action of pulling his hand down. I need a pressing action with my chest and a pulling action with my hands. Finally, there's a rolling forward crest, and then there's a trough or a bowl underneath that my hands accommodate by making a scoop. When I combine all of these 6 contrary motions together, I get the effect I want and direct him to the ground. This will be number 8 of the Eue Bok Soo set at yellow belt. In Eue Bok Soo number 9, you'll see that we've got an overhand grip on the belt. You may ask, when is that ever going to be applicable? Well, actually, believe it or not, in a lot of traditional wrestling forms like, say, Mongolian wrestling or even judo, people sometimes, as they're struggling to find purchase and negotiate a certain throw, you'll see them grab in certain strange places in order to effectuate the throw they're looking for. At any rate, it's just good for us to learn to adapt to any grip or weight on our core. So the response is like this. I need to stride, a half stride forward with my right leg because it's on the side of his elbow. Note that when I do this, I must not turn my foot sideways. I must truly keep it square. The reason why, if I turn it sideways, it's very easy for him to pull me off balance, and then I have no standing whatsoever. On the other hand, if I do as directed with my foot here and he pulls, there's a kind of root, like as though I were on water skis or something like that. At any rate, this gives me the stable posture I need, because now, having inserted my fingers in this shape, just at the soft cartilage of his wrist, at the gap between his styloid process and the beginning of his metacarpals, bracing them there, I have a little bit of play and fluidity on his wrist. I turn my elbow against his elbow, again keeping my feet in this same place. And maintaining the pressure there, I roll my body up and over to the gap between us. And you can see that brings him down into that empty space. Once having gotten him down, I then posture up and I move my thumbs from the side of his hand to the top of his hand, just below his pinky. And then using both thumbs, I press downward, and that's my submission. For number 10 of the Eue Bok Soo, you can see we've got an underhand grip on the belt. Sometimes that happens, but we can also think of this as a euphemism for something else. My response has to be this. My hand clasps underneath with my thumb and forefinger bracing the sides of the gap of his wrist just next to the styloid process. Then, this is the tricky part. I need to inhale and fill up my abdomen at the same time as I pull his hand toward my abdomen. For a moment, when my belly inflates and my hand pulls forward, there's an elastic impact that keeps our masses united for a split second. It's in that split second that I'm going to slide my left foot back and drag my left hand along with it. I don't push with my left hand because that's too easy for him to resist. Instead, I have my left hand attached like a rope to my left foot so that when my left foot moves, it's the thing that moves my hand. When I do it like that and do that breath I was talking about, I can cause him to slide and stoop down. Once he is down, I simply grab his head and with my knee, punt his head.